Good evening. I'd like to call the Maplewood Planning Commission to order on October 19th. Roll call. Paul Arbuckle present.
Lou Yang present.
Alan Deegan present.
Okay. The approval of the agenda, any corrections or additions?
Staff and Commission, Chair and Commission, staff does not have any amendments to the agenda as presented.
Okay, need a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Allen,
Second.
second by Bashar. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hearing all ayes. Approval of the minutes, any corrections or additions from September 21st?
Chair and Commission, staff does not have any amendments to the minutes as presented.
Need a motion? Motion by Cheryl,
Second.
second by Deshar. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstention.
Hearing all ayes, of 2 abstentions from Lou and Fred. We are at public hearing number E, 1091 County Road C, wetland buffer variance. Staff.
Thank you, Chair and Commission. So again, we're looking at 1091 County Road C East. The existing home that had been on that site was demolished last year, and so before you is a proposal to build a new single-family home on this site. In order to do so, the applicant is seeking city approval of a wetland buffer variance, again, for a new single-family house. There is a wetland, as you can see on the screen in front of you, that Manage A wetland has a 75-foot setback. The grading for the new home will come within 30 feet of this wetland edge, thus requiring a 45-foot buffer, or I'm sorry, 45-foot variance to the buffer requirements. The home itself will be just outside the 75-foot requirement, so it's not within the wetland buffer area itself. Looking at the other setback requirements, to the front yard, the requirement is that a new home would not be any closer or any further away than its neighboring homes. And so it can be as close to the County Road C right-of-way property line as 24 feet, and that's where the applicant is proposing to have the front part of the house meet. So that meets the code requirements. Side yard is a 10-foot for the house for the setback and a 5-foot setback for garages. The applicant is proposing a 10-foot setback on either side of the house. So again, that meets, because of its proximity to Coleman Lake, there is the shoreline ordinance comes into play. The house itself will be approximately 250 feet from the ordinary high water mark, again, meeting city code. So really what we're focusing in on is that wetland buffer setback. And again, it's the grading that will occur within that. And so we'll walk through a few additional slides here. The zoning here, that light yellow is showing on the north side of County Road C. All the single-family homes are all zoned consistently R1. This is a survey that was, all these drawings were included with your staff report tonight. This is a survey drawing of the property. This is a picture of when the existing home was still up. So we're looking at the property with the 2 red structures that have since been removed. And that neon green line is what indicates the wetland buffer delineation line. So again, the home will be to the south of that line, and the grading will be what we're focusing on today. Some additional photos looking, front yard looking north from County Road C, so looking into the lot. And then from the backyard looking north towards the lake itself, Coleman Lake. And then turning around, still in the backyard, looking towards County Road C, and that's where you can see that grade difference that does occur currently from where the lake and through the backyard up to County Road C. And this was the site plan, again, included with your staff report, where you can see where the home is located in proximity to the property lines and that green wetland buffer line. This is the facade of the home that will face towards Coleman Lake. A couple floor plans here that you could peruse in your packet if you're so inclined. The upper drawing here is what would face County Road C. Again, and then the bottom drawing is the east elevation. And again, the top here is what faces the lake, and then the west elevation, or another side elevation. So with that, I will state this project was reviewed as ordinance requires when we're looking at wetland buffer setback variances. The Environmental Natural Resources Commission reviewed this project and recommend approval. So we're looking for the Planning Commission tonight to hold the public hearing, make a recommendation, and this project is slated to go to the City Council this coming Monday. So with that, staff can stand for any questions, and I know the applicant is present as well.
How do they determine the actual edge of the wetland there? Because it's just all weeds in that. How do they come up with that?
Sure. So the applicant has been required to, you hire a wetland person that does wetland delineations. And so they go on site and they are able to determine by looking at the vegetation and what's on existing conditions to determine where that line is. And so when we have properties, whether it's residential, commercial, where there's a wetland or a wetland buffer impacting the site, the city always requires those delineations to be done and submitted.
Okay.
How they do that, I don't know. That's why they have to hire someone to do it.
Right, right. Yeah, it sounds right, the weeds that are there, right? Is it code for everywhere to have the houses fall within that distance between the existing houses?
Chair and Commission, that is a code requirement within the R1 single dwelling. So typically, if we're talking about a new development subdivision, we're looking at a minimum setback of 30 feet, maximum of 35. But there's a specific clause that's been included with the R1 district that accounts for established existing neighborhoods like what we're looking at today. And so the intent of the zoning district is to have consistency, neighborhood character. So it allows that flexibility to build within the setbacks that have already been established.
Can you get a variance?
Yes. There's a front yard, Chair and Commission. It's a front yard setback reduction authorization where you can actually increase or reduce your setback. And it's a staff level approval. It's not even to the variance standard.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions? Did the homeowners want to come up then and? When are they going to tear down is it 1085? When are they going to tear that one down?
Hi, my name is Justin Haynes, owner of the proposed property.
Hi, Katie Scher, also co-owner of the property.
So yeah, we're coming before you because we are requesting to build this home. This is actually family property, so prior to the proposal of this project, the previous home was my wife Katie's great uncle. So this has actually been family property that has been in our family for quite a long time. So definitely sentimental value. Everything we've done with the design and character of the home was meant to fit the local neighborhood and the restrictions within it. So definitely trying to add value to the community.
Are you a McClellan then, or down the line?
Yeah, so not my mother. It's her family.
Okay.
So they were McClellans. Yes, her mother was.
Okay. Know them well.
Oh, you know Irma?
Yeah, I knew the whole.
Knew Irma?
McClellans.
Yeah.
Yep, yep,
Mhm. Yep. She was my mom's aunt.
yep.
Yeah. So we'll take any questions you have, and our architectural designer is here too if there are any questions that he can answer as well.
One of the provisions of approval is to have a driveway permit. And those are fairly ambitious in reducing the size of driveways for water, for rain, for impermeable surface. It would be quite smaller than what you show on your drawing. Do you guys have any problem with that, or?
Yeah, so there's actually been some revisions even since what you're looking at. So getting approval for the driveway is also part of the county. So we're actually not having two inlets to the driveway. So it will be just one inlet, and we will have a turn-in that will still abide by the 40% and under.
Yeah, and I think it's
Thank
at
you.
38% in the drawings that you have, and so it may even be reduced from that without the second right-of-way.
Yeah.
Anybody else, everything? Yeah.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, no, it just seems like it's okay.
All right, thank
Good
you.
deal, thank you. Now, I'm going to open it up to the public, if anyone would like to speak on this then. Nobody wants, you don't want to say something good for the neighbors, or?
Hi, Nathan Meredith, 1101 County Road C East, so the property immediately to the east of the proposed project. Really, hats off to Katie and Justin for their planning. My wife and I are in full alignment with the plan that they presented. Really nice architectural design in terms of the proximity to the wetland, very consistent actually with the other kind of homes, including our home. Having been there for 5 years, definitely maintains good health of the wetland with that kind of distancing that I've observed anyway for the 5 years of watching that cycle. So overall, very much supportive of the project that they proposed and think it's beautiful work. So thank you.
Now, what, you said you're directly to the east. Now, how come your dock runs onto that edge of the property? How does that work out?
That is a wonderful question. That is a wonderful question. So it's something that we're actually working with them on in terms of what's the long-term start. We bought that property with that dock in that location.
Okay.
So I don't know the backstory with why that deviated into adjacent property, but that's something that will need to be corrected before our property changes hands.
They won't let you share?
Well, we could do that too. I don't know that they would want to share that dock. Let me put it that way. It's,
Okay.
I don't know. It might be on its last legs.
Okay, thank you. Thanks
Yeah.
for your input.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, my name is Will Spencer. I'm actually the architectural designer on this, so I just wanted to just make myself available for questions and then also point out that as part of the Environmental Resource Commission, we are getting a native planting plan together to offset some of the wetland mitigation, which is actually from the current setup. So currently, I think as you guys can see on the wetland plan, there's actually mowed grass that goes into the wetland. So as kind of part of this process, we're also working with the county then to get a native planting plan together so that we can even offset more of some of the, I guess you might call damage that was done by the previous kind of setups. So, yeah, otherwise, happy to answer any questions you guys have about the design or anything like that, too.
No, looks good.
I've got a quick question. So just kind of the area that will be graded, is it more just making it level from where the house is, all the way up to, where that?
Yeah, it is a little bit. There's a slight walkout in the bottom, but what we've done in the design is we've actually made it so that the walkout is really contained in the middle. And the design of the house is such that, I think as Mr. Martin mentioned, we're being respectful so that the extents of the house themselves don't encroach on the setback. So it's really about like having to dig a hole for a foundation. That's the piece that's going to be going into the setback. So it's really nothing kind of other than that, and then some deck posts. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak?
I'll just state that I put my comments in the packet, and I'm in support of their proposal.
The neighbor to the north?
Yes.
Last call. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Any other additional questions? Okay, we need a motion.
Motion to approve a resolution for a 45-foot wetland operations for a new single-family house at 1090 County Road C.
There's been a motion by DeStar, second by Allen. All those in favor?
Aye.
And I have to abstain from our conversation last time. Oh, I think I am,
I think it is, it's probably too far away. Okay,
so I just have to abstain since I have vested interest in the
okay,
decision.
okay. Did everybody say aye? I couldn't hear you, Fred. Did you? Okay, okay. Hearing all ayes then, passed. And one abstention from Cheryl. This is just our recommendation, just go before the city,
Chair and Commission, this coming Monday on the 25th.
okay? So it'll move quick then. Okay, thank you. We are on number 2, North End District. A, adoption of the zoning district. B, adoption of the design guidelines. C, zoning map amendment ordinance. Staff.
Chair and Commission, thank you. Before you tonight, as the chair mentioned, we're looking at the creation and adoption of the North End zoning district. Just as a reminder, this process really started in 2018, 2019, when we started working on the 2040 comprehensive plan. That work identified the North End as an area needing further study. That's when the city commenced the North End Vision Plan, which was adopted at the end of 2019. And at the end of that process, then we jump-started into looking at the zoning district and what that should entail and how to enact that vision that's been created by both the comprehensive plan and the vision plan. And that's what's before you tonight. So I know this commission is fully aware of the work that's gone into this creation. I know some of the commission members were at those open houses during the vision plan when we had full rooms at the Ramsey County Library and the additional work that we've done on outreach since then with the zoning code. So tonight we have Rita Trapp from Hoyzington Kegler, who's led and helped us with the creation of this zoning district, and she's going to walk through a presentation outlining the district and the standards and these next steps, and then after that we'd be looking for the commission to hold a public hearing. So with that, I'd hand it off to Ms. Trapp.
All right, thank you. It's nice to see everyone again. Again, I'm Rita Trapp from HKGI. There's a number of elements that we want to walk through, both for your benefit and anybody in the public that hasn't been up to speed on all of the information. So I just want to give a brief overview of the development of the vision plan and the development of the ordinance itself. And then we will walk through the contents of the ordinance to make sure that it's kind of understandable what the different sections are and their purpose. We'll talk a little bit about the design guidelines and the proposed rezoning and next steps.
Do you want us to interrupt during the thing or wait till the end?
That is a good question. Let's start with you can interrupt me when you have a question, and then if it seems like it's getting distracting, then I'll let you know, because sometimes it's hard to know when I'm going to get to a topic. So let's start with, let me know if you have questions. Might be easier, but sometimes it gets hard if you preview some of the information that's coming. It's hard to know. So yes, thank you for clarifying. So the purpose of the proposed North End district is really to implement the guidance for the North End area that came out of the comprehensive plan and the North End vision plan. It is to create a premier mixed-use area in Maplewood based on the fact that there's already multimodal transportation access. We want to create high-quality design, and we want to further the greenways and open space that are located adjacent to this area but really aren't connected through this area. And one of the aspects of the actual zoning code is allowing for flexibility for existing uses to continue. This is a unique area in the fact that there are many, many property owners, and there is the reality that many of those property owners will want to continue as they are today before any change would happen. And so we're trying to create a district that's somewhat flexible in allowing that to happen. And I'll talk a little bit about the provisions that we've added to try and address that. So the district location is surrounding the Maplewood Mall area. As you can see from the map, it extends from County Road D to Beam Avenue, and then from White Bear Avenue to just west of Birch Run Station, so kind of between Birch Run Station and St. John's Hospital. The existing areas you can see from the photos below is really dominated by auto-oriented retail uses, vast areas of parking, little to no pedestrian or bicycle access, or at least no pedestrian access or bicycle access that's really inviting. You may be able to do it because there's large expanse of parking, but it's not really clear how you move through those areas and that you would really want to move through those areas. So in the development of the vision plan, it came out of the 2040 comprehensive plan, which was adopted in 2019. This area guided the north end for a mixed-use community designation, which was the highest designation of density in the city of Maplewood, recognizing that this area was unique to the whole city, intended for commercial retail service, office, business, as well as residential uses. We really want to support the transit investments that have already happened and those that are anticipated with the Rush Line corridor development. And really the intention is to have flexibility. The intention of both the comprehensive plan, the North End Vision Plan, and even these design guidelines is to not be too prescriptive to property owners. We're trying to strike that balance of allowing flexibility, but really giving guidance to what the form and character of what we would like it to look like. Maplewood Mall really is the center of the redevelopment area. However, we anticipate with all the different property owners, even within Maplewood Mall, that things may develop in stages and phases rather than a wholesale redevelopment of the site. So after the comprehensive plan was adopted, the city undertook the Maplewood North End Vision Plan, and the vision statement is provided for you. But again, the idea that is a mix of land uses where people can have goods and services, recreation, community gathering, learning, living, all of the different uses mixed together in a really high quality environment. There was a long-term vision plan that was identified in the North End Vision Plan. This shows the possible full redevelopment of the North End Vision. This is just one idea of how things could get laid out. It is a framework that we used for developing the zoning districts. However, it is not as prescriptive as is shown in this diagram. So this diagram shows very specific uses and very specific layouts. The elements that we really took from this is where potential roadways or streets would go through, as opposed to specifically saying uses need to be in specific areas of this redevelopment plan. The design guidelines that accompanied or were part of the North End Vision Plan looked at street design, building design, and open space design. There was actually over 100 guidelines that came out of the North End Vision Plan, which is a lot, and it's a great guidance. But when we actually looked at developing the district and developing regulations, we really needed to pare it down to the essential elements, those things that are really the most important to the city, and those things that are actually able to be regulated kind of on a objective basis. It's very difficult to do regulations in kind of a guideline format. So everything that we put into the North End District that we'll be reviewing this evening had to be something that was a yes/no answer as opposed to a guideline. So the development of the ordinance, we were before you in 2020 a few different times. I just wanted to kind of remind you, since we haven't seen you for a while, we've been doing some of the community engagement. But we really talked about in June of 2020 the shifted approach to a street type framework instead of a use-based framework, which is the traditional method of a zoning district. Then we talked about building placement and design standards by street type, and I'll be walking through each of these elements in just a moment. And then in October, we reviewed the full draft of the district standards and provided feedback to the project team. We have since done some outreach on the actual guideline or the zoning district. There were letters to property owners and tenants sent in advance prior to this public hearing. They were sent in the summertime to provide an opportunity for property owners or tenants to reach out to us with any questions or concerns. The website had a video and a FAQ that was provided. We also held a virtual meeting and an in-person event at Maplewood Mall. So the intention was that hopefully we would identify any issues or concern more on an informal basis as opposed to the formal public hearing. But this is still part of the process. Highlights from this outreach, there was more than 15 individuals that participated in the virtual and in-person meetings. Staff has also had several individual conversation with property owners, folks that were not able to attend the meeting or had an interest in having more of a private conversation about understanding how this particular ordinance affects their properties. Generally, we found that there's more just interest in learning what this is as opposed to being very concerned about a particular element. There was a couple of questions asked about what happens with existing properties. As a result of those conversations, we did make adjustments to the ordinance to try and be clearer about that and make sure we understood what would happen when property owners had a situation and they wanted to continue or make adjustments to their property. So I'm going to move on to the contents of the ordinance. I was going,
Rita,
yes?
was there any negative feedbacks that they said, I don't really want to participate in that or anything, or that just doesn't fit to my development, or?
The 2 meetings that I attended, there were nothing that I would say were particularly negative comments. I don't know if staff has had any of those conversations.
Chair and Commission, yeah, staff has met individually with several property owners in this neighborhood, and no, there hasn't been, why are you doing this, don't do this. It's, there's been questions on how this is going to affect, how would redevelopment occur, good conversations, but no, we have not heard that message of, don't do this.
Okay.
So I'm going to walk through section by section, but not dive into the exact details in every section and not have the section in front of you. So we certainly can switch over to the packet, look at individual language, but we do think it's important that you understand each of the sections, what their purpose is, what we're trying to achieve. So the introductory provisions you can see in front of you include the purpose, definitions, applicability, general provisions, and administration. This area is trying to establish the intent behind the district. We do use terminology that is not used in other sections of the code. This is a form-based district. Generally, your districts are use-based district, where they say these are the uses. This one is really focused on what is the character of development. So there are some terminologies that are very unique to this area, so that's why we have definitions. And then we have applicability, general provisions, and administration, which I'll talk about in just one moment. So applicability really sets up the framework on how we apply the regulations. So 2 frameworks that we have. One is the street types regulating plan. And this says what are the different types of streets we will have in this area. The graphic does a good job of showing you we have the major arterials and the major collectors. Then we have the local connectors, followed by proposed local connectors, and then neighborhood main streets, which are proposed. So any of the dotted lines are streets that are not currently in existence, and then also the neighborhood internal streets are also not in existence. So those may change slightly, but generally this is the framework that is being thought to provide that connectivity that we're really looking for. One element of pedestrian-oriented design is to not have really long block sections, but to really encourage smaller blocks that are more walkable, more ways to reach the same destination, to disperse traffic a little bit, and also just to make it more comfortable. And these, we have standards that are based on each of these types of characters. I will say we have fewer standards kind of on the major arterial or minor arterial and major collectors. Those are roads that are already in existence. There's not a lot we're going to do with street design with those. But there are things about when buildings do front on those streets, what's the type of character that we're seeking. And as you move from kind of the bigger streets to the smaller streets, we're looking at more pedestrian friendliness design as we move to the smaller streets. We're anticipating that if we make a great neighborhood, people are going to be walking on those local connectors. There's those neighborhood main streets as opposed to walking on White Bear or Beam. And that's kind of one of the goals, is that people are in the district instead of on the edges of the district. The other type of regulating plan is the open space network. Shows a greenway that extends through the district. This one, both of these regulating plans really are based off of the North End Vision Plan that was adopted. So those were very direct connections to these. We show a greenway that moves through the district, that continues the greenway that already exists from Hazelwood Street past the St. John's campus. So the idea that we still want to continue that as really a spine through this area. Then we have neighborhood parks at 3 key locations, and those are shown in the darker green, and pocket parks. And those, I will explain these a little bit later, but that's kind of the framework that has been created for this district. One of the other kind of introductory provisions is the general provisions. Again, this is the idea that we recognize that development will happen over time with many different people, many different property owners. Any new development or redevelopment will need to follow the standards of the new North End District. For existing structures, the expansion of existing structures can occur, but as long as it doesn't conflict with the proposed future street network. So we don't want to have a size of expansion that means a street that we were hoping for won't be able to go through, because any development that happens today obviously will be here for 40 to 50 or more years. And then also they need to meet the existing non-residential development standards of the code. So this means that they are under the same standards that they are today. So those are two of the ways that we're trying to make it more flexible to be appropriate for existing property owners. There are also subdivision standards. Subdivision standards, which are based on the street type, they establish how individual properties can subdivide and what the blocks and lot might look like. I'm not going to walk through all of these, but I'll kind of give a high level of many of them. So if we look at street design standards, if you are in the actual ordinance, you will see for each street, we have specific dimensions for the right-of-way, the lane widths, the bicycle, the pedestrian way. They're all based on street type. The emphasis is really trying to create a facility that is safe and attractive for bicycles and pedestrians. It is using a combination of the North End Vision Plan and your living street guidelines, so it's kind of looking at all of those elements and putting them together. And then there is also identifying the relationship between the public open space and the right-of-way and the adjacent private open space. And this graphic does a good job of trying to talk about the fact that even if you have a property that wants to have kind of a front patio space, we still need to make sure that there is space for an actual walkway or a sidewalk continuing through. We don't really want to block that passage. And so this is what this graphic is trying to talk about and explain, and there are some standards about that. As I said, there are cross sections provided for each street. This is an example of what one of the cross sections look like. So when a new development would be proposed, and they do include the construction of a street, this is available for city staff to work with that developer on the construction of the street.
Rita, a question there. On the parcels there, they talk about there being 10%, you know, 10 on the, for the building and then 10% for green space there. Is that 10%, that boulevard piece that's between there, is that where that other 10% comes in?
Let's see. Are we talking this one?
I think either one, because I think most of them require, yeah, most of them require that 10, the 10%.
Let me just have it in front of me so I make sure to not.
The other problem I see with that is people that are going to, if there's any parking there, to have to come over that green space there is going to be hard to get onto the sidewalk too.
So I'm not sure what the 10% is that you're referencing. The driving lanes are 11 feet wide.
Let's see if I can find it.
And I have the packet printed out too, so that if that's helpful. Do you know what page number on the packet it is?
I do have notes on here. It would be on page attachment, it's E2, attachment 1.
Yep. Kind of we're on page 39-ish.
Mr. Chair, do you have like a table number, figure number, section number?
It's,
Yeah, is it the table?
It's E2, attachment 1, table 4, public open space standards.
Oh, okay. I was just getting to that.
Oh.
Perfect. So let's talk about that, and then let me provide an overview. Maybe that helps, maybe it doesn't, so we'll see. So relative to open space, this district is going to take a slightly different approach. Whoops, be nice if I updated yours too. Than what you have done previously. The open space standards will be, the city will continue to require 10% of the subdivided land dedicated as public open space. If you're located in these areas that are addressed in terms of these green areas, then that's what the public open space would go for, is that we're trying to create a neighborhood park in generally those three locations, kind of three quadrants through there. We're trying to create some pocket parks, and then we're trying to create the greenway. So if you're not specifically located there, it'll probably be cash in lieu of, which helps the city in creating those spaces. But when you're in those areas, that's what we're looking for. And the standards provide how big the acreages of the park or the pocket park would be and what we're trying to aim for. So that's the public side that's very standard, similar to what you have today. The part that we're adding that's a little bit different is the idea of creating private usable open space. Typically, when we do multifamily development, it's not unusual that you would have a requirement that so much of the multifamily development would be just open space. You need 20% of the site as open space, or whatever the case may be. We're trying to give a very specific idea of private usable open space. That 10% of your individual lot area is required to be used as private outdoor usable open space. So you can see the different ways that someone could implement it. Courtyards, plazas, picnic areas, something on the roof. But the idea is that people that are living in the multifamily apartments or townhouses deserve to have places that are actually usable, not just the setback areas on the edges of your property. And so this is trying to get at that idea. This will be in addition, because the one part is for public use of everybody, people visiting the district, the commercial, everybody has this. This is very specific to the multifamily. Actually, residential and non-residential provides this area, so that if you have a development, you need to provide some use for your residents, the tenants, people visiting your tenants. It's trying to add that pedestrian element, that activation of the space. It can be private, can be totally public, it can be a combination. That's one of the things that is a little bit more flexible.
So they won't get credit then for that boulevard space then, because that's public.
So the boulevard space as part of the right-of-way, when you're looking,
Yep.
no, the boulevard zone is just part of the actual street. So when you dedicate the street right-of-way, similar to how you have it before, you dedicate 60 feet of street right-of-way, the boulevard will be part of that right-of-way space, but it wouldn't be part of the public dedication unless you do something, okay, just checking in case there's something I didn't recognize.
Okay.
And it wouldn't be part of the private usable open space.
Okay.
So question,
Yes.
talking about open space, one thing I don't see over here is the connection to the trail, the existing trail over there. There is a trail that goes underneath the high tension bar, the open space, between, very close to County Road D over there, and then connects to the regional trail. The back of these forms or placement is going to be parking. I don't see the connection. Either it's going to be commercial or residential. I don't see the connection to the regional trail over there.
Mike, if you can help me.
I think it's going to go down Beam, ain't it?
When you're talking about that high tension, are we talking about the north-south?
Yeah, the open space high tension bar. Yeah, yeah. The high tension bar is a dedicated open space. You cannot build underneath it and all that stuff. In some area by County Road D over there, see, there's a connection through the sidewalk to the trail that crosses County Road D.
Let's see, on the north. So I know that this trail connection goes to the greenway that goes to Hazelwood, which then goes north towards the Bruce Vento Trail.
Yeah, that is on the other side. That is on the other side of Beam that we are talking about. I'm talking about on the north side. I'm talking about on the north side. You see, most of these farms, the placement is going to be on the north side of White Bear.
Are you asking about, on the north side of Beam, are you asking about a sidewalk or a trail?
Trail, the connection to the trail.
Isn't that further down and north of County Road D?
D? Yeah. But there is no connection between, is it Hazelwood?
It's where, at the corner of Hazelwood
Yeah,
and D.
yeah.
So that's out of this zone area.
No. The pocket, where you have the lake over there or the green area over there, that is out of the zone area. But before that, on Hazelwood, at the corner where you have Blue Art or what is that, a restaurant or something like that, where you have the senior living, the converted hotel, okay? There is no connection, any form of connection to the trail in that area. I don't see it.
Yeah, from the trail, there isn't any connection.
Yeah, there is no, but from the new development behind where the hotel's supposed to be, where you have the open space under the high tension something, for that new development, there is a trail that goes through that place and it starts very close to the library. Yeah. So what we are developing to the Maplewood Mall, there should be a connection depending on the funds. But over there, with the forms and placement, for the most part, we have parking that backs that place up.
St. John's or whatever it is now, the
No,
Minnesota.
no, this is far away from St. John.
So you're talking the Ramsey County, by the Ramsey County Library, the existing residential development has that trail that comes through on the north side of the library,
Yes,
and then it crosses.
yeah, it doesn't. I don't see it crossing.
So we can look at it again. This was based on the vision plan, which tried to consolidate all of that access to one
Exactly,
location.
exactly,
Which
yeah.
is that greenway that's showing on here, and then crossing, and then going on the south side of Maplewood Mall towards potentially a crossing over White Bear Avenue. So we can talk with staff to see if there's a change, but that's where the trail essentially would go. And then all of the streets within this area would have either a trail or a sidewalk, one or the other, depending on the street section.
Yeah, depending on the street section. If you look at it too, you were talking about having a short block, 460 feet, no, short blocks, not super block, within this zone area. Okay, how do you balance, if it's a short block, you need to balance the walkway and like bicycling too, you know? How do you balance that, depending on the height of the building?
How do we balance having enough pedestrian and bicycle way if we have shorter blocks?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of it's going to be based on the street section, and each street will be slightly different in terms of whether it's an on-site or on-street shared trail or a bicycle. So, for example, whoops, let me go back. This street section has a sidewalk, and then it has a bike lane, because that's what's proposed for a neighborhood internal street. But then when we would move to other types of streets, then what is being proposed changes. And these are based on what was recommended in the actual vision plan. So, for example, on a local connector street, which has a wider right-of-way of 100 feet, you'd end up with an actual shared trail. So we're trying to use urban, kind of different types of street sections to move people through. And then we have that dedicated greenway spine that moves you back to that neighborhood you're talking about and then back towards County Road D.
Well, it is obvious over here that it is obvious over here that the local connector street will either be County Road D and Beam, right?
No, a local connector street is not those streets. I believe those, let me look, are those?
I think those are major streets over here. Within that place, then you have the neighborhood,
Yeah, so, let me back up. Those are major arterials and minor arterials. The local connector streets are, so I say them right, are the other streets.
South Lawn and
South
Kennard.
Lawn? Yeah,
And
South
Kennard.
Lawn.
And then Legacy.
Kennard, right?
Yep, correct. Those are existing, and then in the plan here, the proposed would be Legacy running east-west.
That's right.
So the local connector street is the one that has a shared trail, and those run north-south, except for Legacy. We're kind of continuing the Legacy Boulevard look all the way over to White Bear. Then we have the Greenway spine, which is not shown on this, just north of, or right in the, where Birch Run is today.
Okay,
kind of in that
Greenway,
look.
what do you call it? Greenway?
A greenway,
Okay, yeah,
which is the idea of a green space with a trail through it.
exactly, that is
And then
right.
that goes from Kennard to South Lawn, kind of on the south side of Maplewood Mall, over to White Bear, and then if you're able to get a bridge, you could do a bridge crossing over
Okay,
White Bear,
yeah.
or you'd come down to Beam and then go across to the park.
So that is not on this thing that you gave us.
It's not on this image, but it's on this image. You can see the green, the darker green color, above kind of those green splotches, green circles.
Okay.
That's the greenway. And then the greenway goes through the neighborhood park. So it kind of looks like it gets disconnected, but that's because then we have some neighborhood parks that are also in that area. So we are trying to make a connection all the way from the Bruce Vento Trail from Hazelwood across where the St. John's kind of green area is on the north side of their parking lot, and then all the way through this area.
Okay.
Used to worry more about wheelchair access by the time this is built.
Get a little closer to your mics, please. Getting signals from the booth, okay?
Okay. It was just a smart comment anyhow.
Commissioner, did that answer your question? Yes. Do you think we need to look at it anymore? Or?
Yes, I think you need to indicate that. I think you need to indicate it somehow and show it so that that connection is there and it's obvious for people to see, you know.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's mostly the fact that the bike and pedestrian connection isn't as clear of what they are and how it moves through there.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
got it. All right, let's see. Talked about that. I think we were here. Were there any questions about this before I moved on? I think I explained it, but just in case, we're good? Okay. So then we're going to talk about site design standards. So this really focuses on where should the building be placed relative to the street. And this is, in essence, what makes this district different than many of your other districts, because it really focuses on the form of the buildings, the building placement standards. So the standards, again, are going to be based on street type. So as I said, if you're along Beam or White Bear, while we would like you to be pedestrian friendly, it's not really realistic that it's going to be totally a pedestrian environment, because those are bigger, heavier, used roads. We do want that to be the case when you're on a neighborhood street, a main street or a local connector where you feel that the building is there and it really relates to the pedestrian. So we have what is called a build to zone for street frontage, and that says that all buildings along that street have to be placed within that distance. It's different than a setback. A setback is you have to be behind a line. This is saying you have to be within an area, and then that allows a little bit of flexibility, but does tend to prevent buildings from locating way in the back of the lot with parking in front of them, which is what we don't want to have happen in this district. This district is really intended that the buildings are easily accessible from the street, so that if you're a pedestrian, you can easily walk along the street and go into the building. So along a neighborhood main street, the distance is 5 to 15 feet, so there's about a 10-foot room for buildings to kind of be placed. That's not saying the entire building, the entire length of the property. There is something that we talk about as minimum street frontage. So that says this much of the building needs to be put inside of that build to zone. We recognize that it's not realistic that 100% of the building can be located in that front setback area, that you need room for driveways, or you might have a design feature, which means you might want to set it back. There might be a reason for a small parking area, those kinds of things. So we have built a minimum street frontage. The range is 40 to 80% based on street types again. So if you are a street where we're really trying to make it more pedestrian friendly, you're going to have a larger requirement to be along the street frontage. If you have a more automobile oriented street, then you'll have a little bit less, down to the 40%. We retain the minimum side yard of 5 feet, minimum rear yard of 5 feet, which is similar to what you have today in your commercial districts. We also have off-street parking and loading standards, the idea of the parking being placed in the side or rear yards, not having parking between the building and the street, and then really encouraging shared parking and shared accesses to reduce impervious and to just make the fewer driveways that you have to cross as a pedestrian, the safer you feel and the easier it is to move through an environment. So the more potential areas of conflict or intersections, that's something that isn't a favorable environment, so we're trying to reduce those by having shared accesses, shared parking where we can. The required parking spaces in this district are different than what you have in other areas of the community. We have a minimum and a maximum, trying to prevent the sea of parking that does sometimes exist, trying to move us in the direction of taking advantage of the transit accessibility, and also the idea that we're trying to encourage a mix of uses. Hopefully people can live and shop in this area or recreate in this area, potentially work in this area. And so you can see the space requirements that we have. There are also screening standards for refuse and mechanical equipment that, again, talk about the aesthetics of the area. We also, oh boy. Sorry, I wasn't moving these. Let me pause for a second. So building placement standards, I want to make sure the building width zone, the frontage zone, makes sense. Off-street parking locations, the pink areas to the side and the rear. I'll pause for a second. These are the off-street parking locations.
What part of half of my car I'm supposed to leave home then?
Yeah, half of your car.
Also on the lodging there, there's no space for employees. How come, how do they consider that?
So it depends city to city. Some cities that I work in like to move away from having so many spaces per employee because that's a really hard measurement to do. It's easy for me to say, how many hotel rooms do you have? Okay, this is how many parking spaces do you have? But when you have standards like this many per number of people on max shift or this many employees, that fluctuates from time to time. And so we have moved towards a standard of just doing the number of rooms because that doesn't change. And so those things should be incorporated in the standards that are placed here. The reality, just like all the parking, is not everybody's going to be located or be there at the same time. And we kind of treat parking standards as if everybody at 5 o'clock at night, everybody's going to be at their house or at their business or at their hotel. But there is some fluctuation between who you would need. So for example, at night you would need hotel space for the guests, but you probably don't have as many employees. You may have more employees during the day. So there is that fluctuation. But that's why it hasn't been included, because that's a hard standard to enforce or to even understand if it's working or not working.
And Chair and Commission, just on that too, that's consistent with how we regulate hotel parking today. It's one space per room. That's the standard.
Now, are they going to be able to comply with the 20% too on that, with the out parking? It has to fall within 20%?
I'm not sure what that's referring to, if you can help.
There it says that it has to, the open surface parking area must be limited to no more than 20% of total site area for a particular project.
Oh, so that's trying to make sure that the parking lots don't overwhelm the project site. So that's a method of encouraging underground parking as opposed to open surface parking.
Okay.
We do also, in this code, have minimum bicycle parking spaces. And you can see the different types of standards based on whether they are more guest-based or whether they are residential tenants or occupants of a commercial space. But this is one element that has been added to just, again, reinforce the nature of this district and what we're trying to achieve. And then there are the building design standards. So that's really focusing on the architectural design and details for individual buildings. I'll use this graphic a number of times because this graphic kind of tries to show you what the different elements are that are being regulated. So building size standards by street type. We have minimum building height, maximum building height, upper floor step back. So that's the notion that upper floor, a certain number of floors need to be pushed farther back. So when you are on the street, it doesn't feel like you have as many stories because there is a point at which your perception or your eyesight can't see all of those floors if they are stepped back. And then the maximum building length without some type of adjustment or articulation. So as you can see, this again shows the different types of streets that as you're on the Beam and White Bear, you can have a taller building. As you move towards neighborhood internal streets, they're going to be shorter buildings. This is taller area because of the intensity that was planned for this area.
There's only one requirement for one setback at those heights, not additional.
Correct. It's not that every so many floors you have to step back farther.
Right.
We have found that is challenging for developers and builders to do. If you continue to do that structurally, it becomes a bit challenging, and so generally we don't recommend doing that. You recommend doing it once and then not again.
Creates a water problem,
A water problem?
a huge water problem.
Oops, I went too far. Okay. Also, there are some other requirements, building facade requirements based on street type. The idea of the principal entrance needs to be on the major street. There are provisions in the code that help you understand if you are on a corner lot, which is the primary street that you're being concerned about. Trying to have entrances every 75 feet, so again, people don't have to walk as far and it's clear to see. The street facade articulation, you can see at least every 55 feet down to 20 feet. Again, the idea of making it interesting to everybody in the district. And then the transparency, the idea of having windows really makes it more of a pedestrian environment. Exterior building materials, these are just the summary of what is there. It's very similar, I believe, to what you have today. I don't think we went significantly different. But we do have primary and secondary exterior materials and accent materials, and the idea of trying to integrally have those materials. And you obviously have the Architectural Design Review Board that helps with material choices. But those provisions are in this code as well.
Can I, before you
Yes.
go on here too far? One of the issues I had with all that glass is some of the things we've had issues with in the past here recently, protecting buildings during riots and civil unrest. Is there any way that there can be a balance with that because of the storefronts could be easily broke into if there's so much glass?
I haven't been asked that before, so I want to pause and
I
think.
think on a different level.
It's something that could be thought about. I hesitate a little bit because we're making, it's kind of like the parking, where we do a sea of parking for like the one time of year where we have a need for a sea of parking. That's kind of what I feel about, is that we're ruining the 365 or multiple year experience because we're concerned about an event that hopefully won't happen again. So I would hesitate to do something significant for that reason. But I understand what you're saying, and that, 2 years ago, we never would have thought that that was a consideration. So
Right.
I respect what you're saying. I just hesitate because of that, is that we want to create an environment that's inviting, and if then we're changing things in a way that maybe isn't positive for something that we all hope won't happen again.
So, on that same vein, for public areas or streets, are we gonna have some rules regarding lighting, street lighting?
Just, I believe, I'm just gonna double check because I haven't focused on lighting so much, there's so many details. That we would be using the city's lighting requirements as they are today.
And so,
But
when
I
you're
wanna
trying to
double-check
be
that.
more, pedestrian friendly and trying to have people walk around and so on, for more safety sake, it would be better to have additional lighting in that area.
Well, on attachment E2, attachment 2 there, on number 4, it says, streetscape should utilize shorter pedestrian scale pole fixtures to improve pedestrian experience.
But it does not say how often there is going to be a post, and that's what I saw was missing.
Right.
That, like in our suburban residential areas, the poles are so far off that the middle homes in the block are totally dark. So,
We can talk as staff if that's needed. That wasn't an item that came up as something that we needed to do different than what you have currently in your code today. Part of that is probably because there is an incentive for developments to have an appropriate amount of lighting, and most of the time when we do lighting, we actually are concerned at the opposite end of the spectrum, where they do too much as opposed to too little. That's been my experience, is most of the time when I write lighting regulations, it's because there's been somebody who has too bright of lights and we're trying to tone things down. But we certainly will revisit that and talk with staff and the engineering department about whether that's needed in different ways. This is also, the street sections will be overseen by the engineering department. So where we're trying to do that is really in the public space and the public realm as opposed to the private, to really create safety on the sidewalks and the trails. And so that may not be something for the development, but we can certainly look at that again if we need to do more.
yeah, because some of these buildings are going to be having residences from second floor up if there's just a commercial on the first floor. But you can still have lighting that just reflects down onto the ground level and not be bothering the residents up on the second or third floor. So, because as we
Have
talk more about
you had
safety.
issues with lighting in the past when you've seen developments?
Too bright,
What?
too bright.
Usually too bright. So is that, but I understood yours was more about safety, and so
And
that wouldn't be too bright.
walkability.
Walkability. Okay.
Right. 'Cause especially also if you're gonna have some space that is gonna be used by a restaurant for people to sit outside and so on, you're gonna, people are throwing things around, and if you can't see too well, you may end up having tripping hazards and whatnot, so need to have clear vision.
Okay, we will take a look at it. I'm not sure if a change needs to happen. I think we need more discussion about that, but we can certainly look at that a little bit more. Just briefly, the use standards, this district does list permitted conditional uses, but really the intent of this use is that you can have a mix of uses. Relative to the residential uses, we're really looking down, starting kind of at the townhouse, row house density up through apartments and residential over other uses, but not down to the single family level. So this one's going to have a higher density of uses. Obviously institutional and civic uses, and then commercial uses, retail services, offices, and hotels. As I referenced way at the beginning, if you remember, the vision plan had very specific colors on very specific blocks. This actual district does not do that. It says you can have any of the uses in any of these areas, and that was intentional to provide more flexibility for property owners, for the marketplace to identify where are the appropriate locations for the various types of uses. One other element that is added at the end of the ordinance, it will not actually be inside of the North End District ordinance, but instead will be in the sign section, is that we did need to provide regulations for signage. The staff is recommending that we put the North End District and the mixed-use district signage regulations together, because in essence, the mixed-use district is your most similar district to this district. And so the provisions that we have in the actual ordinance talk about making changes to that section of the sign ordinance. Signs on new buildings or new developments would require review by the Community Design Review Board, but new signs on existing buildings or existing developments will continue to have review by staff. Pre-existing non-conforming signs complies with the non-conforming regulations. So again, the idea of trying to provide flexibility for existing uses to continue as they are today. And then we have in the changed regulations, specific regulations about wall signs, projecting signs, window signs, and awning and canopy signs. So the types of signs that you might see in a pedestrian-focused mixed-use district. And we can walk through any of those elements if you have questions. But that would be a change to the sign code as opposed to a new section in the code itself.
Does that include the glass windows too? Where they can't write with paint on stuff on the windows?
It talks about the fact that you can have a window sign that doesn't really talk about paint on the windows. It's applying an actual window sign that would be on there, and it can be, there's sign regulations. So it says you can't have it cover more than a third of the window. And then we actually have an entire maximum square foot of all signage. So it's not like you can have a wall sign and a window sign and a projecting sign. You know, there's a kind of a maximum that people can hit, if that makes sense.
Right, as long as it's not all painted on the glass windows, which is ugly.
Yeah, and I don't have the definition of window sign in front of me, because I assume that isn't part of your window sign. I wouldn't know for sure.
Chair and Commission, no, it's not defined in that to capture that specific example.
So they could do it.
Chair and Commission, yeah, it's something you see that occurs today, correct?
Right, yeah. I just think they're ugly. And if we're trying to make it look more attractive, that's definitely an ugly sight.
So you would be recommending that that get removed?
That
as
there
an
be
option?
no painted signs on the glass, yeah, that's.
Okay. That's,
Find that painted sign on the glass.
Well, people will put advertisement, they'll say, 20% off today in big red letters painted on their glass, you know, and then they.
Yeah, on the glass. How is that different from windows?
It's the same, the windows are made out of glass.
so a window sign could also be a decal that you have printed and then
Exactly.
stuck on it that looks a little bit more
Professional.
professional. I didn't know
Yeah.
if that was a good word. Or it could be a placard that you actually have, you know, maybe you have hooks in the ceiling and you have like a placard that's done. So what I'm hearing is those are good. You'd like to maybe see kind of the I don't know, sales lot, kind of like 20% today, maybe not done in this district, because it doesn't have quite the character that you would be looking for. And certainly, we can make that distinction in these regulations, that a
Please.
window sign can't include this.
Yeah,
That's a relatively straightforward change.
that's what I'm getting.
Yeah, printed material would be
Yeah,
better
I'll have to
than
figure out what the
painted.
wording is,
I mean,
but
see, there's right on that glass right there, that looks professional, see how that's on the glass?
that's like an etching kind of a element. It's more like I took a big marker and I wrote something.
Right.
I think if I had a picture, I'd have it in my head. I know what we're looking for. I'll just have to figure out what the wording is. That'll be the fun part, right? All right, I wrote that down as a change. Any other signage questions? All right, we do have the design guidelines, which actually was just referenced relative to lighting. The design guidelines is a separate document. The intent is to provide additional information to property owners and developers. The thought was, with this new North End district, it's unlikely that we are going to want to send the entire, 100 and some page North End document to someone. So we were trying to pull out the really important elements that kind of captured the character of what you were looking for, of things that we didn't think could actually be regulations. So this is the design guidelines section. There are some guideline statements and some precedent imagery examples. The intention is that staff would reference this as part of the review, so you would know how, if they did adhere to some elements of the design guidelines, you'd hear about how they did that as well. Obviously, they're not regulations, so you wouldn't be able to approve or deny based on that. But it's another way to kind of elevate the design that you are receiving from property owners or developers. So we have them broken into site design guidelines, so looking at loading, paving and pathways, stormwater management, trees and landscaping. Then we have some building design guidelines looking at the scale, entrances, relationship to the street, open spaces, and sustainable design, and then some street design guidelines. And this page is actually related to the fact that Beam, White Bear Avenue, and County Road D are county roads, so we didn't really want to have those as standards in the code, because really it's up to the county how they want to do their roads. But we did want to have the guidelines established so that when discussion happened about any of those roads, the city would have something to point to in those conversations with the county to say, this is really what we'd like to see, this is where we'd like to go. And by memorializing this, it kind of makes sure that it doesn't get forgotten as part of the North End plan. So that section probably would be used more with the county than with any developers, and that's why it's last in that document. So it doesn't get distracting. So part of the request this evening is to actually rezone the properties, and you can see the areas to be rezoned in yellow. The city is intending to proactively rezone into this area. That's why we've spent the time trying to figure out how to make any existing properties be able to continue into the future. But this is the area that would be proposed to be rezoned to the North End District. As you stated at the beginning, we do have a public hearing noted for this evening. So the staff did notify the property owners and held the traditional public hearing notice. And so that's trying to make sure another opportunity for the public to provide comments or ask questions. If you are comfortable, depending on the conversation during the public hearing, we do have a suggested motion that would recommend approval of the actual district standards, the rezoning, and the design guidelines. So I can answer any other questions that we haven't covered yet.
I noticed here too in section 44-693, number 6, it said PODs are not permitted within the North End District. But then you go back here, and then that gives the different types that can be, like a licensed care facility. How come they contradict each other?
Is your second reference to a use table?
Yes.
A CUP or a PUD?
PUD, yes.
So,
A PUD, yeah, that's a CUP.
yep,
Yep,
no problem. That's why all our initials.
okay.
The intention is that this area, that we wouldn't want to do plan unit developments because that opens up more flexibility in negotiation. And the hope was that this is really established, this is what we want people to address, and that there's enough flexibility for them to meet their needs. That's the hope.
Okay. Oh, the other comment I had too was about solar panels. I know they're talking about the green thing and that there too, is not to have solar panels at visual, to be able to see those from this, from your view from the sidewalks and that.
And that's in the guidelines, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is that something that you aren't sure about?
Well, that's something I would think would, if we're trying to make this look nice, to have those visually can be kind of gaudy or whatever, looking at solar panels.
That could make it very challenging for a developer to say, hey, you want me to try and go green, but you want me to hide the solar panels, and the square footage is not available for me to hide it.
Or they put it on the roof and not hang it on the side of the building.
I mean, with this
Yeah.
form and placement, I don't think they're going to be outside or in the facade or anything. I mean, the solar panel, they have to be on the roof, right?
They
Right.
could though. They could though. It's not designated not to.
But what
So
would be the
I assume we're
purpose of
talking
putting it on a
about
window?
sustainable design number 3.
Correct.
So it's interesting because the North End plan that was adopted specifically had a version of this, and the intention was, given your interest in sustainable design, the idea that putting them in a place that people could see it helps to communicate and educate the public if we hide it all the time. And I understand what you're saying from a design aesthetic. These are guidelines, so I would not anticipate that everybody will follow it. So that will be something that you would have to decide on a case-by-case basis about that. But this does encourage it from an education perspective. If that's something that you as a group decide you're not comfortable with, then I would recommend either changing the wording or pulling that out as a specific guideline. But it was in there because that's something that was encouraged as part of the North End plan, to encourage it as a way of communicating, educating, showing that how it can be done in a way that's attractive. But there is always that unknown. I can't guarantee what it will be.
Right. Well, the plan review would actually have to okay that too in the design. Wouldn't that be true, Mike?
Chair and Commission, so the city has a solar ordinance already that talks about placement and design and aesthetics. And so, for an example, visibility, the solar system, solar energy system shall be designed to blend into the architecture of the building or be screened from routine view from public rights-of-way other than alleys. The color of the solar collector is not required to be consistent with other roofing materials, and that's talking about both ground and building mounted. So ground-mounted solar energy systems shall be screened from view to the extent possible without reducing their efficiency. Screening may include walls, fences, or landscaping. So that's already codified.
Okay.
So the city has taken that thought already to think about that design, and so that there wasn't a need, as Rita mentioned, to duplicate that effort, and it is something that Maplewood doesn't want to completely run away from and hide, that it is something that is encouraged in the city.
Okay, good. Thank you. So no change.
Okay, sounds good. Yes, I was just highlighting in my notes what the changes were. I have 3 kind of written down.
I just had a quick question going back to the use standards, and appreciate that it's mixed use. Was wondering though if there's any standards in terms of densities, so once there's enough of one type of use, is there something that kicks in, or is it, you could
So-
have a lot of one thing?
There is
Outside of residential, of course, I know that takes
No,
precedence.
that's fine. So the comprehensive plan talks about residential densities 25 to 50 is my recollection. Units per acre, and so that would be the measurement that you would have every time a residential project kicks in. Currently, we haven't talked about having or concern of one type of use overshadowing the rest of it. That's certainly a discussion you could have this evening. That hasn't come up as a concern. I think the idea is, let's try and be flexible, let's see what the market can generate, but it's certainly, I can appreciate why you're bringing it up as, do we need to be thoughtful about that?
And
in
is that
some way?
something over time that once it starts going, we could
Oh,
look
you
at?
can certainly
Okay.
make adjustments if you feel like things aren't going the direction that you want. And I anticipate that once you start to use this, there may be little tweaks that will come out, like, now that we see the application of that, maybe we don't quite like that. That does happen whenever you create a new district. Usually it's not wholesale, but there may be little things that work or don't work. But generally, I anticipate this is going to be a very long-term type of redevelopment, so you'll be able to see kind of where things are going and make adjustments. I'm not anticipating you're going to see the whole thing going at once. So that may give you the time it needs to see if there's things you like or dislike.
How it evolves.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Med Council hasn't pushed anything different, because they've seen the draft of this already, not wanting us to be high density in more area.
So the comprehensive plan was adopted. This will implement the comprehensive plan. Typically, they don't review down to this level in terms of a zoning ordinance and saying that it's good, bad, or otherwise. They rely on the cities to create the districts that will implement what the comprehensive plan said. Unless you had a specific conversation with them, that's not usually the process, but.
Yeah, Chair and Commission, from the get-go, this hasn't been pushed by the Met Council in any way, and this has been Maplewood-driven and led, and will continue to be so.
So they won't eventually come and say, well, we want this to be zoned.
Chair and Commission, the Met Council does not review our zoning ordinance.
Okay,
And they
okay,
don't
okay.
review our zoning designations.
I thought they were God, I just thought that maybe they might.
Close, no cigar.
So, Michael, with that in mind, I'm just wondering that with the adoption of the proposed North End District guidelines and the compliance with the comprehensive plan, does the city of Maplewood try to incentivize the development or redevelopment?
Chair and Commission, yeah, that's a great question. And, and I know we've had conversations in the past of, how does the city help implement this? And, we're not likely going to be the lead in purchasing properties just based on market value and the complexity of what needs to happen here. So there needs to be a partnership between private property owners and the city. And so that's a discussion for the city council ultimately, and it's going to be project dependent, probably location dependent, what comes forward first. But yeah, I think the city is going to need to be willing and ready to be a partner to make things happen. Now, we don't have an incentive program that's here to show you what will happen, but it would probably, at least that's the start, be a case-by-case basis based on what the development community and the market bring back.
Got to open up for the public hearing.
Did anybody
Good
else
job.
have any? Fred, did you have something?
Awesome.
Yes.
Otherwise I can sit down and make the microphone open.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I think nobody had any other questions. We'll open it up to the public hearing. If somebody wanted to come up, are you interested in coming up, or?
I have some questions. I don't know if this is appropriate format or.
Yes,
That's
yes,
the
this
time.
is the
I'm
time,
just
yeah.
trying to figure out, is there a graphic that's good to have for you?
Yeah, it was, attachment 1, figure 3, or it's the street types.
Okay, yes.
I have a question on.
Let me go to that. You can ask the question and then I'll sit down and then you tell me when I come back up
Okay.
and answer.
If you'd like to, is there a sign-in sheet there? Okay, if you could sign that in then, and then
Sure.
ask away, and I'm sure that if it's real complicated, we'll have to have Rita come right up and answer that.
I hope not. Todd Phelps. With respect to the street types here, it's a little difficult to tell from figure 3, and I'm sure there's been discussion about this, but I just was curious as to whether these are already platted or if they're reserved. They appear to be crossing.
What is the street zone, what is it called?
With the proposed local connectors as well as the neighborhood street proposed streets, it just, again, I don't know if those run along property lines. One appears to cross the property owners that I represent. I just was curious as to whether or not there's a plan to take those, or if they're already platted, if there's easements reserved, what the city's plan is for actually implementing all those interior streets was kind of my first question. And I don't know if you want to answer that, and then I've got 2 more, so.
Okay, well, I think Michael will have to answer that, because that's more of the street designs. Actually, it'd be nice if Steve was here to kind of answer some of that stuff.
Well, Chair and Commission, and Rita can jump in if I'm missing parts, but the development of the street network will occur as redevelopment occurs. The city is not, at this point, going to be proactive in developing the street network, so it's not looking to purchase property. I believe the ordinance does have limitations on where buildings could be set in terms of where the street network is, so reserving the ability to implement the network. But as roads start to get built out, it's going to be, again, that partnership between the private property owners and redeveloping their sites and then implementing this network.
Does that kind of answer it? I don't think they're necessary, I mean, they're wanting to be a partnership to kind of coming together with making it livable for everybody there, I think is kind of the key, isn't it? Kind of what you're saying, Mike?
Yep. And the key thing is it's not being implemented right now or in any near time frame. So this is a long-term activity here.
Yeah, but if they're going to build something tomorrow, they'd have to be in compliance if we okay it.
Yeah, if you come through the design, and the distinction over here is between local connectors and the neighborhood.
That's helpful, thank you. I just was curious as to whether or not we were going to receive a condemnation notice anytime soon. So,
Not even close.
okay. On the open space standards, I was a little unclear on the presentation. I'm not sure if the 10% requirement only applied to the residential and mixed use that included residential, or if that would apply to other,
Everybody.
It's to everybody, okay.
Everybody, yes.
Chair and Commission, anytime a subdivision occurs.
Yep.
Okay. And then I guess my last question was just on the financial incentives piece, and that I think was asked, it looks like there's, lighting questions as well as the bicycle, if there's been discussions about for redevelopment, tax increment financing, or any other possibilities along those lines, so.
Sure.
Go ahead, Michael.
Chair and Commission, yeah, just to reiterate, the city has, tools available to it to work with redevelopment in the community, and this is one area that's obviously right on the council's radar and wants to be successful. I think, again, I just want to reiterate too that the city is doing this to create investments and to create a better district, not to incentivize disinvestment. So we're looking to make things better, and so the council is going to come along that way too, and is going, I can't speak for the council, but where we've come from this point, they're going to want to use the tools available to them as well to, again, create investments to make this a successful district.
Right.
Thank you very much.
I think too, one of the other
Michael,
questions.
has the city used anything like tax increments financing in the past?
Chair and Commissioner, has the city used tax increment financing? Yes, it has. Yep, yeah, I mean, there's 14 districts in the city, 14 tax increment financing districts, and the council's looking at a 15th one this Monday. Not related to anything that we're talking about tonight, but it's not a tool that Maplewood uses a considerable amount compared to some other communities, especially in Ramsey County, but it is a tool that's available.
I think too, there was another, I don't know if that was, if you heard that or not, when she had also mentioned about the possibility, if you didn't want to comply with the 10%, that there was funds that could be put into into developing another development for that space,
And Chair and Commission, since we're talking about park dedication fees, I just want to, you don't see that aspect of it on other development applications, but anytime there's a subdivision in the entire city, there's a park dedication fee. And that can be through dedication of park space, but often now in Maplewood, for the rest of the city of Maplewood, North End's different because now we're going to actually want to put in some additional park space, but the rest of it usually does come in the form of payment, and then that goes into park infrastructure funding. But so that anytime if you see a subdivision come across, or the city approves lot divisions, there is a park dedication fee that is applied, and that's just typical city development funding mechanism.
But it also did state in here too, if they didn't comply with that, that they could also pay money into that fund too.
So, and chairing, commission, that's just, to me, that's another example of how we're working with the ordinance to make it flexible based on, you know, the exact conditions of whatever development we're reviewing at that time.
Right. It'd be nice if they went with it, right?
Was it Honey Valley or something on Clara Street, that should be a catering too?
Yeah, yeah. Keep it up. Did you have anything else? The woman, did you want to interject anything, or you?
No, I'm fine. My name's Lisa Deal. I'm a commercial real estate broker in the Twin Cities, and I represent and am here on behalf of 3 of the owners who have a vested interest in this.
Okay.
District. Thank you.
Did you have any questions or anything, or?
You've done a very nice job, and thank you, Rita, for your presentation this evening. I think you hit some very key points that I know my owners didn't have concerns, but just, I think, some of questions.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. This was the public hearing then, since there are no other individuals in the room. I will close the public hearing. Did anybody else have any other questions that they wanted to ask Rita or anybody, or?
Well, my only question is that we've raised a few questions. They may be minor, but we've raised them. So is it prudent to make a motion to adopt it, or should we be waiting to come back with the changes, clarifications that we just talked about?
Chair and Commission, Rita and I will obviously discuss the items that you've directed us to look further into, and we'd bring other staff in, like our Public Works Director. So I feel I have an understanding of what it is you would like to see, and this would go before the City Council. There's a City Council member here that also has heard what your concerns are. That's your comfort level. I would still recommend moving to recommend approval with the caveat of the items that you've directed us to, but.
So you can make that motion, like that additional added things that we had commented on? You don't have to be specific other than.
So, Michael, we're going to have to make 3 motions, correct?
Chair and Commission, that's how, the staff report is laid out, but Rita provided the language that's in front of you on the screen that would accomplish the same thing in a more streamlined manner if you're wanting to go in that direction.
Yep, so I'd move to recommend approval of the proposed Northeast North End District ordinance, the proposed rezonings to the Northeast North End District and Northeast North End District design guidelines with the recommended changes that have been proposed by the Planning Commission members to be taken into consideration before it goes to the City Council.
I second that.
There's been a motion by DeSar, second by Allen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Hearing all ayes, passed. Is that just the one?
That's the one that covers all 3.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you.
Chair and Commission, this is tentatively scheduled to go before the City Council on November 8th. We have some work to do before that, so that's why I throw in the word tentative, but we're looking at November for sure to bring this to the City Council and wrap up the work, honestly, that you've been working on for several years here now. So I want to thank the Planning Commission for everything that you've done to provide that input and guide this process, both with the comprehensive plan, the vision plan, and now the ordinance. It's been a long road, but an exciting one and beneficial one, so thank you for that.
Yeah, it's been fun to put input into it and that too. You know. Okay. Any new business?
Chair and Commission, staff does not have anything further for you tonight.
Unfinished business, visitors' presentations, commissioners' presidents, staff presentations. What happened with the fire station? Aren't you the attorney from them too, or were you not? No?
Chair and Commission, that project goes before the City Council this Monday.
This Monday, okay, okay.
The fire station that's already being built?
No, the one that they're
Former
building,
fire station on London Lane.
Former, okay,
where they're building that apartment building.
yeah, okay.
Something went before them since we approved, didn't it?
Chair and Commission, the project at 1875 East Shore Drive, the 60-unit senior co-op.
Oh, yeah.
That went before the City Council at their last meeting and was approved.
Okay, okay.
I'm sorry, how about the property on the lake off, is it Edgerton or?
Sure,
Arcade?
the single-family home,
Yeah.
the lot with variance at 2010 Edgerton, also was at the City Council meeting, at their last meeting, it was denied.
Really? Okay. Okay, I think that does it. Make a motion to adjourn. Thank you. Thank you. She would all hide and jump on